When was the last time that you were actually excited about a new phone release or computer?
A new, powerful, private, personal intelligence system, deeply integrated into your phone.
A new universe of possibilities, with you at the center of it all.
Got another way for you to push the limits even further on MacBook Pro.
For some of you, an answer will come pretty quickly, but for others, it probably has been a while. Every year for the past, I don't even know how many years, it seems like every tech company has been coming out with new devices, giving it great marketing terms like
a new universe of possibilities is born, boosted by a customized processor that's the galaxy's most powerful ever.
Only for us to realize that these devices are barely different than the previous model, all to convince us that this is the upgrade we've been waiting for. But I feel like there are so many tech products that we've been seeing these incremental updates for, and after a while they kind of just get boring. With Apple releasing a handful of new devices this week, from the new iPad Air, MacBook Air, and Mac Studio, I want to talk about what is going on with these big tech companies and how both the people making these devices are incredibly rushed and pushed for innovation, and also the exhausted consumer and how to deal with it all. So first, let's talk about the problem, the yearly upgrade. We've reached a point with consumer technology that everything is so good. Anytime someone messages me asking like, what camera should I look at? Back in the day, we all had kind of our go-to recommendations for various different levels of expertise. But nowadays, I myself, and I hear so many of my peers, give a relatively similar answer, which is you can't go wrong. Like, just whatever calls to you, whether that is your phone, Sony, a Canon, a Nikon, anything, you can't really get a bad camera or device anymore. And because the technology has gotten so good, it remains good for longer periods of time, essentially making the yearly upgrade necessity non-existent. Smartphones, for example, the iPhone 16 Pro. While I obviously have made plenty of videos on the differences and the yearly incremental updates to things like Apple Log, the new lenses, I understand for the average consumer, every time the new phone comes out, there's an influx of comments and people that I talk to, in real life, that are like, what's the actual difference? These look the same, they feel the same, and after that initial one or a couple days where you're like, I have the new device, most of us kind of sit back and be like, yeah, this is pretty close to what it was last year. And again, if you're like me, it can sometimes be hard to have this perspective because I use the phone in such a professional capacity where I notice those 5 to 10% incremental updates. For the majority of people, you could hand them an iPhone 10 and they probably still would be just as happy. And it's not just Apple doing this. Samsung, Google, all the big tech brands out there have a similar story where yes, absolutely there are these new features and the devices are getting better every year, but that's kind of an exaggeration that all the tech brands are using in their product announcements, because when they say this is the best iPhone ever, or the best Pixel ever, or the best S25 Ultra ever, well, of course it is, because it's technically newer, it technically has a one generation newer chip, and it's X amount of percentage better in these different areas. But have you noticed that in a lot of these product launches, a lot of times when they're showing those performance graphs, they aren't comparing this year versus last year. For example, if we look at like the M3 or M4 line, they're not going to compare it to the M2 or M3 line. A lot of times they'll compare it to the M1 line about 3 generations ago, and even that will only be like a 20% performance hike.
Multi-threaded CPU performance of M4 Max is up to 2.2 times faster than M1 Max, and its GPU is up to 1.9 times faster than M1 Max.
And this is happening in the camera space as well. Obviously this year I've been super excited for the new cameras that Blackmagic has come out with, but in my opinion, Blackmagic is one of the few camera companies that actually has kind of a proper upgrade cycle. Like the Pixis is actually a totally new category, but if you were to make the argument that it's a upgrade from the Pocket line, well, yes, we have had a couple iterations that are more, not really upgrades, but kind of like parallel upgrades or whatever it's called. The Ursa 12K has been out for at least 2 or 3 years before this new model refresh has come out. And while of course we never know for 100% sure, I'd say if you're out there buying a Pixis right now, you can be pretty safe to say that you're not going to see another camera that's going to replace that in the next 12 months or probably even 16 or 18 months. Meanwhile, no offense to all my Sony friends out there, I'm always feel like I'm seeing there's some new Sony camera, whether that's in the consumer level, the prosumer, or professional. All these markets are kind of blending together nowadays. And you have these hybrid cameras that are amazing photography cameras, but also for video. It's always like, oh, this camera has all these great features, but these cons, and then these cons aren't in this camera, but it doesn't have this one. Like, it's almost like they purposely make all these different variations of the devices so that you kind of get confused and you never actually get what you want. And you either have to buy multiple of the different cameras to kind of complete a whole lineup, or you're just playing that game where every couple of years you're constantly upgrading in search of that perfect camera. I think more people need to realize how much better they would be at their craft if they actually kept one piece of equipment and absolutely mastered it. My Pocket 6K Pro, which is chilling right there since I've had since day one release, I have mastered that camera. I can walk into any lighting scenario, any shooting type of scenario, and automatically know what type of result I'm going to get, what buttons and shortcuts and ND amounts and shutter and everything that I need to adjust in that camera, I can do blindfolded, because I have had it so long and I have mastered it. But if you're always upgrading every year, if I was always swapping this out, switching to Canon, switching to Nikon, just trying to follow the trends of what camera is more popular this week, you will never end up mastering your equipment, and ultimately that's going to slow down how fast you master the craft of photography or filmmaking, whatever you're going after. So if you're open to mastering whatever hobbies or professional work you're trying to go after, I think today's sponsor will help you greatly. So I love learning new things, and it's not just in the realm of tech, filmmaking, and all that good stuff. Although if you're into that, I highly suggest you check out an awesome class from actually 𝗦𝗧𝗨𝗙𝗙 on Skillshare. If you've been looking to get into the content creation game as well, his class helps you explore everything from writing scripts to filming and editing. Just a week or two ago, I realized how much I've been missing the violin since I quit in 7th grade, and so I would love to relearn it. So I bought one, and I've been checking out this beginner's violin course by 𝗬𝗏, who has over 13 hours of content getting you up and running. And I don't want to brag or anything, but even just after a couple days of practicing, I think it's time to interview for Hans Zimmer Live. Or, you know, maybe I'll wait until I finish the class. So another thing that I was thinking about was, yeah, but what are you doing? This is my video.
It's not just for creative stuff. I love learning new languages. I think I can speak up to 4 now. The latest language I learned was Italian for a family trip that we took last year. I took a class with Kieran Ball. He teaches French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, and you get to learn con un maestro. It was really fun to be able to order food for my family. The waiter was so caught off guard because I said, "Signore, posso prendere un panino con formaggio per favore?"
Show off. Out of here. My video. Thank you. Anyways, Skillshare offers so many categories of different classes, from photography, graphic design, music, cooking, business, marketing. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Huge shout out to Skillshare for sponsoring this part of the video. Let's get back to it. And finally, talking about computers, the reason I feel like I'm making this video this week is seeing what Apple has done with kind of their weird marketing tactic, right? No event. Which is fine, because a lot of times when we just see an incremental update, everyone says that funny meme line of like, this could have been an email. And they did as close to that as possible with this updates. And the iPad, it doesn't even look like they are using new marketing photos from last year model. The new MacBook Air, I will say, does look not necessarily like a solid upgrade, but they lowered the price. They gave it the M4 chip. 16 gigs of RAM. That to me is like the new base Mac Mini, where that is actually a really good deal, really good value proposition for the consumer. But then when we look at the Mac Studio, which I know a ton of people have been waiting for, they made it incredibly confusing. One, there wasn't a whole event around it because it wasn't that big of an upgrade that I think people were hoping for. It got either an M4 Max or an M3 Ultra, and I could probably make or spend a whole video lengths worth talking about how horrible of a marketing mess that is, because the M3 Ultra is actually better than the M4 Max because they never made an M3 Ultra. So now they're just, and again, because these companies just want to turn as much profit as possible, they're forcing their marketing departments to just work on overtime trying to come up with new terminology to make these sound like necessary sales.
So it's game changing when working outside.
I think every year people love the whole new naming schemes of this, right? Pro, Pro Max, Ultra. I mean, I definitely used to make fun of Blackmagic for this with their Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. It's horrible to fit into YouTube titles, I'll tell you what. But I think across the board, having so many variations of products is just so confusing to the end consumer. But like I said before, if you've bought anything in the past handful of years and you're still on the fence of like, should I upgrade? I'm having that urge to, but you don't see a specific area in which a newer version of whatever that is, phone, camera, computer, would make your life or your work better. Trust me, hang on to it. You don't need whatever's newer. I think more than just consumer FOMO or marketing gimmicks, the biggest thing that these yearly upgrades are hurting is true, proper innovation. You know, Apple Intelligence this year has been I'm just gonna say an utter flop. All the big features have been delayed. The new conversational Siri that can also analyze what's actually on your screen and not just a ChatGPT cheap integration has not only been delayed in the current beta, but there's rumors that it may be released in iOS 19 or even iOS 20 a whole year and a half away. Because you got to understand what these engineering, both software and hardware teams are having to deal with. They all sit down, they come up with a list of different updates they think they can achieve in not the year, but probably 7 or 8 months, because at that point, the marketing department has to come in and say, hey, what new features do y'all got for this year's, WWDC or whatever new event? And then they have to spend the next couple of months coming up with new marketing terminology and how to spin it and how to get people to buy the new thing or update the new device, instead of if they all took 3 or 4 years even at this point and said, hey, we're going to work on the new iPhone for honestly even 2 years. So let's say 2 to 3 years. The next 2 to 3 years, we are going to work on the next generation of iPhone or Mac, or Sony is going to be like, we're not going to release another camera for another 3 years. Not only does that give the consumer confidence in making a purchase and like saying, oh, I need an upgrade right now, and I know that nothing new is going to come out for the next handful of years. It gives the company time to go like, hey, let's complete this dream list of features and updates and improvements and have the time to create proper innovation. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to acknowledge something that I am kind of part of the problem. Creators like myself have a huge hand in this cycle. Now, I try my very best to not push anyone to make a purchase. I never really use the terminology like, you need to grab one of these, you need to upgrade to this device. I talk about my own personal opinions, what makes me excited about various different products, and I talk about why you may want to upgrade. But yes, of course, we make videos on pretty much all new devices out there. Now, the way to look at that from your perspective isn't, oh, here's a new gimbal, you should upgrade to this one. Oh, here's a new gimbal, you should upgrade to this one. Usually when I'm reviewing equipment, they are built for different types of people. Take a look at the recent Hohem versus like the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro. Those are 2 gimbal videos that I did probably within like a month of each other. And so I've gotten a lot of messages and comments asking which one's better than the other. And I try to reply to most people saying like they're different use cases. If you want something that fits in a pocket, pretty much built just for the phone, the more minimal setup is definitely the Insta360 Flow. Whereas if you want to attach a mic, an extra light, or an SSD, or a battery bank, you want something a little bit more built out but has a lot of the same features, the Hohem M7 is a great option. So it's our job to make a bunch of different videos on kind of similar products, and hopefully most honest creators aren't pressuring you to buy all these different things. It's more about creating a catalog that you can sift through and weigh those different options and hear the different opinions and facts and make the best decision for yourself. But as someone who also consumes and watches other creators, I understand that you still get this feeling when this new fancy product comes out and a lot of people are talking about it. You may still get that urge to be like, well, you know, I want to upgrade to that thing too. So it's a constant double-edged sword in my opinion. In one hand, this is, you know, my job and my career. This is what pays the bills and feeds my family. But I also take it very seriously and never want to make anyone feel bad for not being able to upgrade to the latest thing. Do I think any of this is going to happen? Honestly, probably not. If anything, the companies are just going to get more intense about finding a way to upgrade even more. But if it were up to me, a multi-year upgrade cycle, in my opinion, would be better for everyone involved. The companies, the consumers, and honestly, I think there's a world where even the bottom dollar gets better, because when something was released, it would become a viral thing to talk about, that since it's been 3 years since the new iPhone came out, so many more people would rush to buy it immediately. But that's just my opinion. As always, I'd love to hear what you think about it. Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.